The treaty ceremony on Vel'kari Prime was supposed to be straightforward. Dr. Ethan Cross was there as part of Earth's diplomatic delegation, a junior cultural advisor whose main job was to stand quietly, observe protocol, and avoid creating any incidents that might damage the delicate alliance being formalized. The ceremony itself was elaborate, as expected for a formal agreement between Earth and the Vel'kari Empire. Hours of ritual speeches, symbolic exchanges, formal acknowledgments from both sides. Ethan had been briefed extensively on what to expect and how to behave. Maintain respectful posture, bow at appropriate moments, avoid direct eye contact with Vel'kari royalty unless addressed directly. He'd followed every protocol perfectly. The ceremony was winding down, final formalities being completed. In another 20 minutes, the human delegation would be dismissed and Ethan could retreat to his guest quarters, grateful to have survived his first major diplomatic function without causing problems. Then Queen Sareth Vel'kari moved past where he stood with the other human junior staff members. She was imposing even by Vel'kari standards, nearly 7 feet tall, wearing ceremonial regalia that marked her as absolute authority. She'd conducted the entire ceremony with perfect formal precision, her voice carrying across the grand hall as she spoke the ritual phrases that bound Earth and the Vel'kari Empire in formal alliance. As she passed Ethan's position, she paused. For a moment, he thought she might address the human delegation collectively, some final formal acknowledgement before the ceremony concluded. Instead, she leaned close to him specifically, her voice dropping to a whisper that only he could hear. "I'm coming to your room tonight." Then she straightened and continued past, her expression perfectly neutral, giving no indication that she'd said anything at all. Ethan froze completely. His mind went blank trying to process what had just happened. The Queen of the Vel'kari Empire had just whispered that, to him, during a formal treaty ceremony. In front of hundreds of witnesses who couldn't hear the words, but could absolutely see that she'd said something specifically to him. He managed to maintain his formal posture through sheer force of will and years of professional training, but internally, he was in complete chaos. What did that mean? Why had she said it? What was he supposed to do with that information? The ceremony concluded minutes later. As the delegations began to disperse, Ambassador Chen pulled Ethan aside with an expression of careful neutrality that suggested controlled panic. "Dr. Cross, what did Queen Sareth say to you?" Ambassador, I'm not sure I should repeat it." "Ethan." Ambassador Chen's use of his first name indicated how serious this was. "The Queen of the Vel'kari Empire leaned close and whispered something specifically to you during a formal treaty ceremony. That is extremely irregular behavior that dozens of people witnessed. I need to know what she said so we can determine if this is a diplomatic crisis we need to manage." Ethan took a breath. She said, "I'm coming to your room tonight." Ambassador Chen's carefully maintained neutral expression cracked slightly. She said what? "I'm coming to your room tonight." Those exact words, then she just continued past as if nothing had happened. "Oh no." Ambassador Chen looked genuinely worried now. "Oh, this is complicated." "Ambassador, what does that mean in Vel'kari culture? Is this some kind of threat? A test? Did I somehow cause offense that requires—" "It's not a threat." Ambassador Chen pulled up information on her tablet, scanning rapidly. "In Vel'kari royal protocol, when a member of the royal family announces intention to visit someone's private quarters, it's significant. It indicates selection, trust, and an encounter that carries both political and personal weight." "Selection for what?" "That depends on context and the individual's status. But Ethan, when a Vel'kari royal, particularly the Queen, makes such an announcement, it's not casual. It's a declaration of intent that binds both parties to specific expectations and protocols. You're now involved in something governed by Vel'kari royal tradition, whether you intended to be or not. What am I supposed to do?" "For now, go to your quarters. Be prepared to receive a royal visit. And absolutely do not refuse her entry or treat this as anything other than the highest honor, regardless of what you personally think about being selected for whatever this is." Ethan's guest quarters in the Vel'kari Palace were elegant and comfortable, far nicer than his usual accommodations. Right now, he was too anxious to appreciate any of it. He'd showered and changed into formal civilian clothing, uncertain what would be appropriate for a surprise royal visit. He'd read everything he could access about Vel'kari royal protocols, but most of the information about private royal encounters was vague or classified. What he did find was concerning. When Vel'kari royalty visited someone's private quarters, it indicated either extreme favor or extreme scrutiny. The encounter would establish or test the individual's worthiness for elevated status within the court hierarchy. Refusal of such a visit was considered grave insult that could damage diplomatic relations. So Ethan waited, trying not to panic, wondering what he'd done to attract the Queen's attention and what she actually wanted from this encounter. At precisely 2200 station time, there was a knock at his door. Ethan opened it to find Queen Sareth standing there, now wearing formal but less ceremonial attire. She was alone, no guards, no attendants, no official witnesses. "Your Majesty," Ethan bowed, his training kicking in despite his nervousness. "Please come in." She entered, and he closed the door behind her, acutely aware that he was now alone in his quarters with the Queen of the Vel'kari Empire, and he had no idea what was expected of him. Queen Sareth surveyed the room briefly, then turned to face him. "You're frightened." "I'm uncertain, Your Majesty. I don't fully understand what this visit means or what you expect from me." "That is honest. I appreciate honesty." She moved to sit in one of the room's chairs, gesturing for him to sit as well. "I imagine Ambassador Chen has told you that this visit is significant in our culture." She indicated it carries political and personal weight. That being selected for such a visit is meaningful. It is. When a Vel'kari royal announces intention to visit private quarters, it establishes the visited individual as someone worthy of personal attention beyond formal diplomatic interaction. It signals trust, interest, and potential elevation in status. She studied him with those violet eyes that seemed to catalog everything. "You are wondering why I have selected you for this distinction. You are a junior member of your delegation. You have no particular rank or authority, and you have done nothing obvious to warrant royal attention." "Those thoughts have crossed my mind. Yes, Your Majesty. I selected you because I have been observing the human delegation throughout the treaty negotiations, and you were the only one who consistently showed genuine interest in our culture, rather than merely performing diplomatic courtesy. I'm a cultural anthropologist, Your Majesty. Understanding different cultures is my field. Perhaps, but I have dealt with many who claim such interest while actually viewing us as curiosities to be studied rather than as people to be understood. You approach Vel'kari culture with respect and actual curiosity about why we value what we value. That is rare enough to warrant my personal attention." She leaned forward slightly. "I came here tonight because I wish to have conversation beyond the formal constraints of diplomatic protocol. To speak with someone who might offer genuine perspective rather than carefully calculated responses designed to avoid offense. Can you do that, Dr. Cross?" Ethan felt some of his anxiety ease. This was beginning to sound like something he could actually handle. "I can try, Your Majesty." "Good. Then tell me, what do you actually think of Vel'kari culture? Not the diplomatic assessment your delegation would approve, but your honest professional and personal opinion." Ethan considered his answer carefully. She'd asked for honesty, but that didn't mean he should be reckless. "In my honest professional opinion, Vel'kari culture has achieved remarkable stability and efficiency through clear hierarchies and strong emphasis on duty. Your civilization has minimized many of the conflicts that plague human societies by creating systems where everyone knows their role and expectations are explicit rather than ambiguous." "That sounds like the diplomatic assessment. What is your personal opinion?" "My personal opinion is that Vel'kari culture achieves that stability at the cost of individual autonomy and emotional expression. That the clarity and efficiency are valuable, but the price, in terms of people being able to choose their own paths or express preferences that diverge from expected roles, is higher than most humans would be willing to pay. You believe we sacrifice too much individual freedom for collective order. I believe you make a different trade-off than humans do. Neither approach is objectively correct. They're different solutions to the same challenges of organizing complex societies. But yes, from a human perspective, the level of control and conformity Vel'kari culture requires feels restrictive. Queen Sareth was quiet for a moment. That is honest assessment. And it is closer to how I sometimes feel about my own culture than I am permitted to express publicly. She stood, moving to look out the window at the capital city spread below the palace. Being queen means embodying Vel'kari values absolutely. I am not permitted to question our systems or suggest they might be imperfect. I must be the perfect representation of everything Vel'kari culture aspires to be. That sounds isolating. It is. I am surrounded by thousands of people daily, all performing perfect deference, all telling me what I want to hear or what they think will advance their positions. I cannot remember the last time someone offered me genuine, honest perspective, rather than calculated response designed to please or manipulate me. She turned to face him. That is why I came to your quarters tonight, Dr. Cross. Not for political reasons, not to test you, not because of some elaborate Vel'kari protocol, but because I wanted to have one genuine conversation with someone who might actually tell me truth rather than performance. Over the following hours, Ethan and Queen Sareth talked. Not as queen and junior diplomat, but as two people discussing their respective cultures, the pressures of their positions, the costs of living up to expectations. She asked his perspective on Vel'kari political structures, social hierarchies, cultural values. He answered honestly, offering both appreciation and critique. She responded with surprising openness about the limitations she saw in her own culture, things she could never say publicly, but that she'd clearly been thinking about privately. In Vel'kari culture, she explained at one point, the queen must be perfect embodiment of our values. I cannot show weakness, cannot acknowledge uncertainty, cannot admit to having personal preferences that diverge from what is expected. I have been performing this role so long that I sometimes forget there is a person beneath the title, someone who might want things beyond duty, who might question whether our systems are as perfect as we claim. Do you get to be that person ever, the one beneath the title? Rarely. These private moments are the closest I come to being Sareth rather than Queen Sareth. And even then, I am always aware that the role follows me regardless of where I am or who I'm with. Except right now. Except right now. In this room, speaking with someone who has no stake in Vel'kari politics and no reason to tell me comfortable lies, I can afford to be more honest than usual. It is liberating. And terrifying. Why terrifying? Because being honest about doubts and limitations feels like weakness. Because I have been trained from childhood that queens do not question, do not show vulnerability, do not admit to being anything less than absolute certainty embodied. Allowing you to see past that perfect performance feels dangerous. But you're doing it anyway. Because the isolation of maintaining that performance constantly is unsustainable. Because I needed to speak with someone who might see me as a person rather than only as a title. Because your honest assessments of our culture suggested you might be capable of seeing past the role to whoever exists underneath. She moved closer to where Ethan sat. What do you see when you look at me, Dr. Cross? Do you see the queen, the perfect embodiment of Vel'kari authority? Or do you see someone more complete than that role allows? Ethan considered the question carefully. I see both. I see the queen who conducted that ceremony with absolute precision, who commands immediate respect, who represents her entire civilization. But I also see someone who came to my quarters seeking genuine conversation because she's isolated by her role. Someone who is capable of questioning her own culture's assumptions. Someone who is more complex and more human, in the emotional sense, than the perfect performance suggests. That is what I wanted, she said quietly, to be seen as more than just the role, to have someone acknowledge the person, rather than only acknowledging the title. Over the course of that night, their conversation deepened. Queen Sareth spoke about the loneliness of absolute power, about the costs of being required to be perfect at all times, about the way she'd suppressed parts of herself to fulfill her role more completely. Ethan shared his own experiences with feeling trapped by expectations. how his career path had been shaped more by what others expected of him than by what he actually wanted, how he sometimes felt he was performing a role rather than living authentically. They found unexpected common ground in their mutual experiences with isolation. Her isolation from being surrounded by people who only saw her title. His isolation from being seen as a useful tool rather than as a complete person by those who valued his work more than they valued him. As the night progressed and their conversation became more personal, Ethan realized something significant. Queen Sareth wasn't here because of some Vel'kari royal protocol or political calculation. She was here because she was lonely and had recognized in him someone who might actually see her rather than just seeing her crown. As the night grew late, Queen Sareth addressed what had been implicit in their entire conversation. When I whispered to you during the ceremony that I was coming to your room tonight, you froze completely. I could see the fear and confusion in your expression. What did you think I meant? Honestly, I didn't know. I thought it might be a test, or a threat, or some aspect of Vel'kari protocol I didn't understand. Ambassador Chen explained it was significant, but she didn't have specific information about what to expect. And now that I've been here for hours and we've simply talked, what do you think I meant? I think you meant exactly what you said, that you were coming here. I don't think the visit was about Vel'kari protocol or political positioning. I think you needed to talk to someone who might actually listen, rather than just performing appropriate responses. You are correct, though the visit does have implications beyond our conversation. What implications? In Vel'kari court culture, a private royal visit establishes the visited individual as someone worthy of personal royal attention. Others will notice that I came to your quarters, that I stayed for extended time, that no official business justified such a visit. They will speculate about your status and my interest in you. Your position within the court hierarchy has changed whether you intended it to or not. Is that going to create problems? Probably. Some will resent you for receiving attention they covet. Others will try to use you to gain access to me. You will be watched more closely. Your words will carry more weight than before, and your relationship with me, whatever that relationship becomes, will be subject to intense scrutiny. She paused. I am sorry if that creates difficulties for you, but I needed this conversation. I needed to speak with someone who might see me as Sareth rather than only as Queen Sareth. And you gave me that gift tonight by treating me as a person, rather than only as a title. I'm glad I could help, Your Majesty. Sareth, when we are private like this, call me Sareth. I have few enough opportunities to be Sareth rather than Queen Sareth. I would like to preserve this one. Sareth, then, though I should probably maintain Your Majesty in any public context. Absolutely. In public, I am the Queen and you will address me with full formal respect. But here, in moments like this, I am Sareth. She smiled slightly. If there are more moments like this, I would like there to be if you are willing. These conversations have value to me that goes beyond their diplomatic utility. I'm willing, though I have to ask, what happens now? Do you just leave and we go back to formal diplomatic distance? Do we schedule more private meetings? How does this work within Vel'kari protocols? That depends on what we both want this to be. The simplest option is that I leave now. We return to formal diplomatic relationship, and this night becomes an interesting aberration that we both remember but don't repeat. That would minimize complications. But I don't want that. I want to continue having someone I can speak with honestly, someone who sees me as a complete person, someone whose company I value beyond what is professionally useful. I want to build something ongoing, rather than treating this as one isolated evening. What would that look like? It would look like regular private meetings, where we can speak freely. It would look like me trusting you with thoughts and perspectives I cannot share with anyone else. It would look like, I'm not certain exactly. Vel'kari culture has frameworks for political alliances and professional relationships, but not really for personal connection chosen freely for its own sake. We would be creating something new. She looked at him directly. Would you want that? To be someone the Queen trusts with her genuine thoughts rather than just her public positions? To be selected for personal connection in ways that go beyond diplomatic formality? Ethan thought about the isolation she'd described. about the way she'd clearly needed this conversation, about the unexpected connection they'd found through hours of honest talk. Yes, I want that, though I'm not sure I fully understand what I'm agreeing to in terms of Vel'kari cultural implications. Neither am I, honestly. I am creating this as I go, building a relationship that doesn't fit neatly into our established categories. But I know I value what we've shared tonight, and I want to continue it. The rest we can figure out as we proceed. She stood, preparing to leave. Thank you, Ethan, for treating me as a person tonight, for offering honest perspective rather than performance, for giving me a few hours of being Sareth rather than always being Queen Sareth. That was a gift I did not know I needed until I received it. Thank you for trusting me with that vulnerability, Sareth. She smiled, genuinely this time, not the formal smile she wore in public. I will see you again soon. In public, we will maintain appropriate formal distance. In private, we will continue building whatever this is that we have started. Then she was gone, leaving Ethan alone in his quarters wondering what exactly had just happened and what it would mean going forward. Over the following months, Ethan's relationship with Queen Sareth evolved into something unprecedented in Vel'kari court culture. They met regularly in private, conversations where she could be Sareth rather than always performing the role of queen, where she could question, doubt, explore ideas without having to maintain perfect certainty. For her, these meetings became essential, a space where she could be more than just the embodiment of Vel'kari authority, where someone saw her as a complete person rather than only seeing her title. For Ethan, the relationship was both honor and burden. His status at court had indeed changed, as Sareth predicted. He was now someone others watched carefully, someone whose words carried weight because the queen valued his perspective. But he was also navigating completely new territory, building a relationship with alien royalty without clear protocols or precedents. During one conversation, months after that first night, Sareth reflected on what had started when she whispered to him during the ceremony. When I told you I was coming to your room that night, I terrified you. You froze completely, uncertain what I meant or what would be expected of you. What did you imagine might happen? I imagined everything from political interrogation to some kind of test I was unprepared for to cultural protocols I didn't understand. I definitely didn't imagine that we'd end up here, with me being someone you trust with your genuine thoughts, someone you choose to know beyond diplomatic formality. Neither did I, honestly. I knew I wanted genuine conversation, but I didn't anticipate how valuable that would become. How essential it would feel to have someone I could speak with honestly rather than always performing perfect certainty. She paused. You gave me permission to be more than just the queen by treating me as a person from that first conversation, by seeing past the title to whoever existed underneath. That simple recognition changed how I see myself and my role. How so? I had believed I needed to be only the queen, to suppress any part of myself that didn't fit that perfect performance. But knowing you see me as Sareth, as someone complex and complete rather than just as a title, has helped me recognize that being a good queen doesn't require eliminating the person. That I can be both, if I have spaces like this where the person is allowed to exist alongside the role. Years later, when historians studied Queen Sareth's reign, they would note the subtle shifts in her governance, more willingness to question established practices, more openness to perspectives that challenged Vel'kari assumptions, more capacity for genuine connection with her people rather than only formal authority. What they would miss was the simpler truth. She had whispered to a human during a formal ceremony, terrifying him with words he didn't understand. That whispered declaration had led to conversations where she could be seen as more than just a crown. And those conversations had reminded her that being queen didn't require sacrificing the person beneath the title. I'm coming to your room tonight, she had said, and Ethan had frozen. What followed was not what either had expected.